Welcome to NC3T's Brown Bag Webinar Series. This is Thom Suddreth from the National Center for College and Career Transitions, and I'll be the facilitator for today's session. Today's webinar is entitled The Value of Project-Based Learning, a Shining High School Example. A little bit about NC3T. You can see my picture on the screen there. But NC3T's mission is every teen with a dream and a plan, and every community with a capable, ready workforce. Some of the resources available through NC3T are the Employer Engagement Toolkit, which is available on our website, and that is practical advice on how to establish and maintain effective business and industry partnerships. The STEM Leader Guide, How to Build a STEM Culture in Your High School, is available through the ACTE. The other one is available through ACTE. This one is available through our website. And then the Pathways Guide, which is coming up, as well as the STEM Leader Guide and the Employer Engagement Toolkit. We hope that you will avail yourself of some of these resources. Today we are exploring dynamic teaching and learning as part of our webinar series, and so let me introduce today's presenters. They are Mike Dardaris and Kacie Rea. A little bit about Mike. Mike spent 5 years as a middle school principal in Marcellus and 3 years as assistant middle school principal in Jamesville. First love, however, was music education. Before moving into administration, Mr. Dardaris spent a decade as the director of instrumental music in the fabulous Pompey Central School District. Mr. Dardaris has a bachelor's degree in music ed and a master's degree in education. Kacie is an English language arts teacher, and she comes to P-TECH with experience teaching middle school social studies at the private Brown School in Schenectady and English language art at Hoosick Valley. Kacie also has a claim to fame in that she directed the musical Willy Wonka Jr. while at the Brown School. Kacie has a Bachelor of Arts degree in English and a Master of Science degree in education. We welcome Mike and Kacie as our presenters today. We'd like to throw up a poll, if you could. Candace, can we go ahead and advance to the poll there? So we're going to present a poll, and we'd like for you should be able to see this on your screen. And we're asking the question, what is your understanding and comfort level of project-based learning? And just select one of the available options there. If you would, just go ahead and take that poll. We'll just leave it open for a minute or two. And it looks like we've got most people that have taken the poll, and 7%, according to the poll, thought PBL was a sandwich. 26% have attended a PBL workshop before. 48% say they have pockets of PBL. and 19% say we are fully implementing project-based learning. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike with the, once again, the encouragement to go ahead and type any questions that you might have into the question box, and we will read those at the end of the webinar.
Hi there, folks. This is Mike Dardaris. I'm the principal at HFM Early College High School, and I have the easy part of the job with my colleague here, Kacie Rea, who is the founding ELA teacher here at PTAC. So I get 1 minute to talk about our early college high school, tell you what PTAC is and the fundamentals of it, and then Kacie is going to talk to you a bit about project-based learning and what it looks like here at PTAC and some of our growth and our learning that has taken place. So a little bit about PTAC. We are a 9th grade early college high school, which means we have students from 13 local school districts come to us in a regional high school setting, and all of our 13 high school freshmen are also freshmen in college at Fulton-Montgomery Community College as well. It's part of a grant that we wrote and were awarded by New York State. Along with 16 other PTACs, this is our first year with the program. So this is our inaugural year of PTAC along with New York State. What it means to be an early college high school: we have to meet all of New York State regents, take all the regular high school exams, and meet all the graduation requirements. But our end goal really is not high school graduation, it's actually college graduation. All of our students attend this school free of charge to them or their family. And through the grant, we pay for their associate's degree. So all students in a 4 to 6 year program graduate with a free associate's degree. So we're a project-based learning school, which means we take all of our content that we teach, and instead of rows and desks and sitting in lines and have the kind of sit and get and then regurgitate what we've learned back out there somehow, we actually take all that content and collaborate through our content areas in larger projects. And Kacie's really going to talk to you about that, but our school has lived that way since day one and has been one of our missions, and we're growing leaps and bounds that way, but have a lot of lessons to pass on as well. Another special thing about our school is that all of our students have business mentors, and the reason is one of the tenets of our school, or one of the pillars that you see there in front of you, is that all of our students have a place of employment when they graduate to be in line with one of our business partners. We have 20 business partners ranging from the U.S. Army, Global Foundries, that if everybody has an iPhone, they made the chip that's sitting in your iPhone right now. It's a $40 billion facility. Right down to our local Broad Albin Manufacturing, a small mom and pop shop. So every child has a business mentor, and these business partners help to create our curriculum, meaning when we curriculum map and skills map, our partners came together and told us what their future employees should look like. So we're taking those skills and pushing them down into our curriculum. And what we found is, oddly enough, that those skills, they're not asking for math content. They're not asking for us to be able to tell all of our geography and make sure that we can just give them all the facts of the content. They're actually looking for soft skills, and that's no surprise, I'm sure, to the people listening. But the soft skills like collaboration, communicating, creating, being able to solve problems, being able to work through problems, taking some independence in solving a problem, or knowing when to ask for help. And sometimes that saves companies a lot of money, is to know the difference between those two things. Having some independence, being coachable, but also being able to mentor somebody else. So we're taking these skills and deliberately trying to push these down into our projects a little at a time. So our students aren't just getting a content education, but they're getting a 4C, if you will: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking education. And we are a STEM school, because our pathways are advanced manufacturing, healthcare, business administration, and IT. And we're also adding renewable resources and green technology next year. So our students will choose a college degree through one of those pathways. And I'm sure I've gone over my minute, but we will, at the end of the webinar, have some students here to ask some questions and see what they really think of living in a project-based learning early college, high school. I think before I pass it over to Kacie, the one thing I do want to make sure that everybody knows that we focus on really, we're a paperless school. It's a one-to-one initiative. We have significant technology, but we have focused significantly on culture and given our students the reins of the school. They've created the code of conduct, and if somebody breaks that code of conduct, they sit in front of their judicial counsel. They've taken a ton of ownership, and they've also taken the liberty of designing a culture where acceptance is a priority. So it's not to say that we don't have our own issues, but our students, who the majority of them, 50% are below reading level, 50% are below math, 90% of them are first-generation college-going ethnic minority, 65% free and reduced lunch. Out of those students, we have not had any violent incidents. We have had 0 incidents of online bullying outside of the school. We have had 0 drug or alcohol-related incidents on the school, and it's not to say that that couldn't happen at any point at any time. We got kids, but right now we think that the culture that the students have created has lent itself to that. And to set Kacie up, I guess this is all great. We had a lot of support, but without a staff and teachers that are willing to take risks every single day, be creative, being willing to put themselves out there, none of this would have happened, which means 50 students would not have this opportunity. And we will be adding 50 every year, hopefully from now until eternity. So at this point, I think I'd like to turn it over to Kacie Rea, our founding ELA teacher here at the school, to talk to you a little bit about what PBL looks like in her life.
Okay, so if we just go on to the next slide, I just want to briefly give you a quick overview of PBL. Based on the poll, it looks like a lot of you have pockets of PBL in your schools, or you're actively implementing PBL, so I don't want to take too long. But a lot of what I'll be talking about is what we do here at P-TECH and how we are currently implementing it. Candace, if you could just go on to the next slide. Thank you. So why PBL? Before I came to P-TECH, I definitely thought I was teaching PBL, but what I realized is I was doing a lot of projects. I would have a combination of lectures. I do tons of really interactive classroom activities, get the kids up and moving around. And as we got through the unit, we took all the quizzes, they would take the unit tests at the end, and then we'd have a really fun project that we'd spend a week or 2 on. But when I came here, I really realized that it's just doing a bunch of projects. It's not truly PBL. So the main difference is with a project-based learning environment, the students are driven throughout the unit with a need to know specific content in order to complete the unit, to complete their project. So they want to know why they're learning something, and the great thing about PBL is it capitalizes on that curiosity, and it turns the whys the students are asking into a driving question, and that driving question guides the student through the project, which is your unit. So since the students are working towards that goal throughout the entire unit, it engages their curiosity, and it gets them really excited about what they're learning. So some qualities about a PBL teacher, just from my experience this year, is you really need to be super flexible. We teach a variety of students, so being flexible with how you're teaching different groups of students, but also we work very close together, all the teachers and staff here at P-TECH. Being understanding, taking risks, being a good communicator, being creative, and being able to look at your curriculum in different ways. And I'll definitely go through those in more detail throughout the presentation. So if we go on to the next slide, we're going to take a look at the traditional unit that I talked about with a project at the end. So you see that you have lecture and activity, maybe a quiz, some review, and then your project at the end. And with a project-based environment, the project really encompasses the entire unit. The project is the unit. So you're living the project while you're completing it. We can go on to the next slide, please. So this was an image that really spoke to myself and the other teachers here at PTech. So if you look at that diagram on the below the traditional unit, you see that the planning process, all the teaching and the learning is happening as the project progresses. So you're not front-loading a bunch of information and then kind of wrapping up with a fun project. So the project launch is my favorite part of the project, so, because it can be super creative. We've done letters from different companies, some of our business partners. We've done plays or had all the teachers get together and create a video, or it could be a presentation from an outside presenter. So it's very creative, and it gets the kids really excited and engaged in what they're going to be learning about. So once they learn what the project is that they're going to be working on, they need to work on what is described in the slide as the need to knows under that project launch. And that's at the point where they start reviewing the rubric. It's really important that students know what's expected of them right at the launch of the project. They create a need to know list that will become their checklist of things they'll need to learn about in order to complete the project. So they're already taking ownership and understanding what they are going to need to learn by the time they get to the end of the unit. So this part is really where we're starting to get into discovery learning and the students taking ownership right at the first day of the project launch. So after the project's launched and the students know what they need to find out in order to complete the project, the teacher starts to guide them through the project by introducing information through those activities and discussions and different things like that. And the students are working on learning the content between the benchmarks that are shown in the diagram. These benchmarks are really important, and they're short-term goals for the students as they work towards this very large project. And it's also a way that teachers can gauge and assess the students' learning. The way benchmark works is if a teacher feels that the student doesn't know the content, they won't meet that benchmark. And what happens here at PTech, if they can't reach that benchmark, the student will go back and reassess their skills until they're able to reach that benchmark and move on to the next step. So benchmarks are a way students can show that they can apply and analyze the information that's being presented in the class. So once they have met their benchmarks, they've learned the material, and they've been working on the completion of their project, they present their final discoveries or their final product, a bit depending on the project. And the presentations here, we usually try to have them attended by an outside audience who are experts on the subjects that they're studying at the time. At the end of the presentation, you have the reflection on learning, and that's very, very important in PBL, especially when the students are new to the process like they are here. Our students come in and they don't have experience with project-based learning at the beginning of the year. So students are able to reflect on their effort, their learning, how they work in a group, and they're able to determine what they can change about their effort and work before moving on to the next project. So these reflection periods have really evolved here at PTech from the beginning of the year till now. We're definitely reflecting on more of our learning and our engagement and how we could learn more rather than how they're working in groups. So those conversations evolve as the year goes on. Next slide, please. So how do we implement PBL here at PTech? We're an entirely project-based school, and we teach most of our content through projects throughout the year. Our students, like I said before, didn't have experience working with PBL before, so we really want to establish a safe environment for learning for our students. PBL relies on students to be active learners, so they need to feel comfortable with their teachers and their fellow classmates so they can share information and ask questions without being threatened or afraid to speak up. So students are usually afraid to make mistakes, but with project-based learning, we really encourage the students to test their different theories and ideas and learn from what didn't work. So we encourage mistakes and learning from those mistakes, and that is, again, why the reflection process is so important. Communication is so important, and I always talk to the kids about this. We always talk about communication. The teacher needs to make sure the goals and expectations are clear, because the teacher's really stepping away from the front of the classroom and just allowing the students to take charge. So as a teacher, my tendency is always to jump in and help when I see one of my students struggling. I just want to help them. But with PBL, I have to step back and encourage my students to try different options or consult with a group member or classmate before they come and seek my help. So the goal here is that they take charge of their own learning and they take responsibility for their own learning. Many of our projects here at PTech cover multiple subjects. So communication between teachers is very important as well. So some of our projects will have up to 4 or 5 subjects that are being taught at the same time. So we need to constantly communicate what we covered in class that day, where the students are struggling in our class, and where support needs to be provided, because they could be working on different parts of the project at any time in the day. On the student end, communication is very important as well. They're not always used to communicating their ideas with each other, so we spend a significant amount of time over the summer and throughout the year working on communication skills and building teamwork skills with our students. Next slide, please. So what is important to us? We really want to create an authentic learning environment. As Mike mentioned before, we have business partners, we have career pathways, and our students are they are college freshmen, so they're starting out on a journey. So we want to create projects that students will enjoy, but they also see purpose in those projects, and they can relate their future career goals while they work on them. A lot of our projects are also based on student input, discussions with business partners, local businesses that we contact, the school community, and the surrounding community. So there's a lot of research that goes in to each project before we even decide on what's going to come next. Next slide, please. So since we have so many teachers working together on one project, we are always talking during the day, emailing, and texting each other at night and over the weekends. We need to know where we are in our class, and we also need to be flexible if students need more support in one subject area, or if they're struggling in a specific area with any given project. So I think one of the biggest things that we learned is to really be open with our communication amongst teachers as well here at PTech. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into the stats in PBL, and I'm going to show you some of the things that we use here at PTech when we are creating a project. So we have entry documents or an entry presentation. There's scaffolding and the content delivery, the benchmarks that we talked before, and we have some final products and presentations. So down below on the picture on the bottom is a picture of one of our projects. It was a final presentation, and we studied Greece and mythology in ELA, and I partnered up with the art teacher, and as you can see, there's a Greek mask. She taught Greek theater and Greek mask making, and it came together in a Greek fair at the end of the year, or at the end of the project, where students would share their creations with the local community. So that's just one example. Next slide, please. All right, this is a sample entry document. I know it's hard to read, but I'll go through what it says on those documents. This was for an ELA and Earth Science project. The task set before the students was to create a picture book. So the letter here comes from a publishing company, and we just created this ourselves, and we made sure that we made it look authentic. So we made up a logo and a letterhead. We made up the address and the publishing person, so they're actually getting a real task from somebody, from a company. On the second sheet there, we made sure to attach our standard publishing guidelines. So the students are able to create their own need-to-knows with some guidance. So especially in the beginning when your students are first getting into project-based learning, they do need some guidance on what is expected of them. So that's those standard publication guidelines on the right tell how long the book needs to be, what's expected of them on each page, what kind of content is going to be required on each page, and then very importantly on the bottom part of that sheet are those benchmarks, the outline, the rough draft, the final draft, and when for this particular project we chose 4 winning books, and those groups got to go to a local elementary school and read those books to 2nd graders. Next slide, please. So once we get into the project, the skills obviously need to be scaffolded, and this image from New Tech Network gives you an idea of how some skills are scaffolded. While our projects are running, we need to make sure that we are scaffolding our class content, the steps in the PBL process, and we always refer to skills needed in college and the workplace while we work through the project. So we're scaffolding many different skills and content. With the PBL process, we're talking about group work, and then with the workplace, we're always referring to communication, the importance of professionalism, reliability, and work ethic. And the thing is that all of these things tie in very nicely together. So it's a very fluid implementation. Next slide, please. So these are just some traditional and new forms of scaffolding throughout the project. We always start with a group contract, and we start off with very specific templates, and as the year goes on, we let the kids take a little more ownership and develop their own templates for their group contracts. As always, there's a rubric, and we also provide detailed checklists so the kids can check off as they're going through. We do calendars, pacing charts, so we've tried many different ways for the students to guide themselves through the PBL process so they're able to keep track of their work, because they are very independent when they're working in their groups. Next slide, please. So a lot of people ask, how do you get through all the Regents curriculum while you're teaching a project-based class? So the whole idea of PBL is that the students are taking control of their own learning, and that really does lend itself to developing critical thinking and literacy skills. So they're learning the curriculum, then they apply it in different ways. So a math problem isn't just a word problem that they complete and move on. It's a challenge, it's applied to real life situation, and because of that application, students remember it. Another thing that we do here at P-TECH is we take short periods of time between projects, about a week, and we use that week to review and recover learning and material. And that really helps to reinforce the understanding of core concepts and go back and reteach some content for students who are struggling. Next slide, please. So benchmarks, especially in ELA, they really do align with the writing process itself. For the Paleozoic story that we talked about, we had a brainstorming sheet of the story outline. The students handed that in, and once that was approved, they would move on and with their storyboard and their outline of what the story was going to be about. Once that was approved, they had their first draft with text and pictures, and then their second draft with text and pictures. So each benchmark kind of, for ELA, fit in very nicely because it's what I teach about the writing process anyway. Next slide, please. So here's just some ideas for final products. Like I said, we've had many different final products here at P-TECH. We've had presentation to school board members and school administration when the students design layouts for our school courtyard. This Paleo storybook, like I said, was a competition, and they got to go to a local elementary school to present their books to second grade students. Students have created Google map tours where you would go on the Google Maps and you would follow their tour through different parts of the state. So there's really no limit to the creativity that's involved with creating an idea for a final product. Next slide, please. So rubrics are very, very important because they help us assess learning. So we use rubrics to assess standards and products for the project. We use standards-based grading here at P-TECH, so all of our learning goals are aligned with Common Core standards. And our projects also target these standards, so the same skills are assessed throughout the project, then they're assessed again in the final project. So we really focus the skills that are in the rubrics that are going to grade the final project, we make sure we use those standards throughout the project. So it does help guide learning and the development of the unit itself. Next slide. All right, so now we have some PTech students here, as Mike said before, that are going to be here to answer questions, as well as Mike and myself.
I'm sorry, we're having a little technical difficulty here. We just want to ask, there is one question that has come up. It says, could either panelist address teacher professional development and prior preparation for PBL?
Sure. I'll talk about it from my perspective, and then maybe Kacie can chime in from her perspective. So the professional development was really organic because the folks that we had come on came from different experiences, but nobody had a similar foundation of what we were starting with. So everybody really needed something different. So I guess one of my first mistakes is we tried, which is kind of against the idea of the school, but we tried a one-size-fits-all professional development. We have an instructional coach, Heather Buskirk, who is working with our staff and really has helped us gain a foundation and knowledge of project-based learning. But everybody grew in different areas and had different needs. So instead of planning all together, which was in our schedule, everybody really developed new needs. So teachers went to kind of more of an individualized staff development plan where they created their individual professional development plan, and they meet weekly and sometimes more with our instructional specialist and basically ask questions and get resources and hammer out problems and just discuss and talk about things that are going well and not going well on an individual basis. Another area that we're addressing is literacy, and this is better suited for Kacie, but a lot of our students came to us, and we didn't test for literacy before kids came to us, but 50% are below reading level. So we started a reading initiative with our staff led by one of our lead teachers over at HFM BOCES, and she's doing a book study with us. I read it, but I can't get it, or yeah, I read it, but I don't get it. And we are basically leading discussions every single week with that, every couple of weeks, and just having a discussion in the school, and then starting a level literacy initiative here in the school. So we really have grown and tried to individualize staff development. I think our biggest challenge is first figuring out what we as a school needed and what was important to us, and what platforms we were going to use. We're going to use active grade. Are we going to be standards based? We're making all those decisions and then kind of reacting to that. So it was a little bit reactionary. Kacie?
Yeah, when in the summer before school, we attended a week-long PBL workshop, and that was really helpful because we got walked through a project, and that was really our first introduction to how we were going to work PBL into the classroom here. Like Mike said, it's very individual, and all of our needs were different in the beginning, and they're all still different now. Like I said, I love creating my entry documents or my entry events, and that's something that I'm really good at now. So I don't need that help while other teachers are still working on that. So meeting with our instructional coach really helps target those individual struggles that we have with PBL.
Yeah, Casey's got a theater and performance background, so when the students show up and she's got an entire Greek agora or market set up and she's in character, and it's hard to I don't know, that's a pretty high bar to set. So it's great for kids and it's great to watch, but not everybody has that. Not everybody's as comfortable with that. So she's very creative that way, and the arts lend itself nicely to this as well. We got lucky with getting her on board.
All right. We've got a couple of questions for students, but before we get there, I'd like to ask one more question on assessments, and that is, how do you measure student growth and what common assessments are used?
We use a STAR assessment for literacy and math, and we use that twice a year. It can be used multiple times, but right now we're at 2 times. We've given it 2, and it's a common assessment for baseline literacy and the math levels, so we can measure student growth. Obviously, all of our students have to take the Regents, so at the end of the year they do take the state exams and Regents for math and science this year. Our students are able to reassess for a standard at any time, as long as they give an effort in the initial assessment and show honest effort. They can reassess because our goal is mastery. So if you're familiar with standards-based grading, we really aren't giving full sit-down exams. What we're doing is grading the different aspects or different skills that we're looking for. So teachers are breaking these pieces out and isolating where students need to be retaught or differentiated, and then students, if they're not happy with their achievement, can reassess in different ways. So that is something very, very different, I think, for them, because if you know how to do school, you can manipulate the system. There's extra credit, there's staying after, there's working at the bookstore to get points, showing up. There's all sorts of ways to manipulate a grade, but that doesn't necessarily show you what you know. Here, which might be a little frustrating for kids, there's no way to manipulate. It is what it is. So it's all based on what they understand, and that has been refreshing, yet also challenging for kids that knew how to do school before.
Okay. I understand we have a couple of students standing by. Is that correct?
We do. We have Jada, who is a college freshman at Fulton-Montgomery Community College, and we have Kyle, who is a college freshman at Fulton-Montgomery Community College. And they're both 14.
Great. I've got a couple of questions for the students then that were submitted by our audience. The first one is, how is this different than traditional learning for you as a student?
This is different because it's not an average-based school. It's more like we have like these.
We're going to have to speak up just a little bit more.
We don't have much paper or pencil, but we mainly use computers, and it's different because it's based on how you were able to comprehend everything, and the teachers let you stay behind after school and get more help than needed. Or if you don't understand something, they'll help you and go back to what you don't understand.
Kyle, what about you? Just speak nice and loud into them.
Well, like what Jada said, it is a paperless environment.
How about working in the groups? Is that different from homeschool, or are you doing more or less, do you think?
Also, with the community-based learning, we get more social experience with other people and how they think. And we use a lot more technology to complete tasks or to learn.
Okay, well, let me follow up with that on your, for the students. How do you feel like you've grown from your first project to your most recent project?
I felt like we've grown because in the beginning, we didn't really know what this school was going to be about, but summer break sort of gave us the idea of working in groups and teamwork. But from our very first project to our very most recent, there's a huge growth in how fast we're able to comprehend everything now that we know what we're doing.
Kyle, what about you? What do you feel your growth has been?
In the beginning of school, with projects, we had to do a need to know, and the teachers used to call on us and ask us what we thought, and we'd be all together and have the same need to know. But as you get farther, it gets more independent, and as a group, you have to come up with your own. And you also, it's more independent because you make checklists, and it's up to you if you want to, like, fail or show that you don't know how, which is affecting your grade. But after a while.
Okay, good. Let me move on and go back to Kacie. And Kacie, I've got a question here that asks, what resources do teachers use to get ideas for projects?
Different resources. We definitely go on to, we use Buck Institute, New Tech Network. We scour the internet. We're also really lucky to be have HFM BOCES as a resource as well. There's technology specialists there, literacy specialists. So we do have a lot of different people to contact. Also from that PBL workshop we took in the summer, we definitely have contact from other people through workshops that we can bounce ideas off of. So we do, I'd say usually when we start thinking of projects, we really start off by Googling and things like that, and then once we start to get a little more ideas, that's when we start to branch off and start emailing people that we've met at conferences or talking to the specialists here at HFM BOCES.
If I could just chime in on that too, our goal also though is for our projects to become authentic from our business partners as well, and we want our students to be working in a real life situation or a scenario on these projects that are generated by our partners. For example, one of our partners needed some web work done and some advertising as well as some communications upgrading for a pitch that they were doing for Sam's Club, actually. So our students actually got to work, some of our students got to work on that project, which butted into a larger project with this company that is going to encompass the whole school. So the local business is getting you know, these young minds that are tech savvy and are thinking outside the box and don't have any restrictions, and you know, can bring this energy and ideas to the table where maybe they're stuck. Also, like Kyle here, they're working on a video game project where next year our students will be collaborating with the International Center for Leadership as well as the Stride Academy to create a literacy-based video game. So instead of the adults doing it and coming out with some lame video game that no one's ever going to play, we put it in the hands of the students, and hopefully these students will make connections, collaborations with the actual engineers.
Very good. In order to be good stewards of everyone's time, I see that our time is just about up. I hope that you made a note of Mike and Kacie's email address in case you have additional follow-up questions. And I'd like to thank Mike and Kacie for taking the time to share what they are doing with in the P-TECH school and the wonderful work that they're doing with project-based learning. We hope you've enjoyed today's session, and we encourage you to join us for next month's webinar, which will be on May 20 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and you may register at nc3t.com. And the title of the webinar is going to be, as you see on your screen, Project-Based Learning, a middle school example. And finally, we'd like to keep improving, and so we would appreciate your feedback on today's webinar. We will send you, at the end of this webinar, you'll be given access to a brief 6-question survey in a follow-up, and we'd appreciate your taking the time to fill out that question. Again, you may connect with us on nc3t.com, sign up for our blog and newsletter. Our two principal partners in NC3T are Hans at nc3t.com and Brett at nc3t.com. You can follow Hans on @HansMeter, and we have a YouTube channel, nc3t/Meter Consulting. Again, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. Thanks to Mike and Kacie and the students at the school.
Thanks, Thom.